morning, I am delighted to be here with all of you. This morning I'm going to discuss the various organizations in the modern secular movement, my experience with their personalities and their symbols. Maybe. I'm going to read this sucker. A bit over 20 years ago. In that time, it has grown to be the largest purveyor of non-theistic merchandise. Over the years, we have had the pleasure of interacting with a variety of the non-theistic groups in the country. Some of them are closely tied to non-theism, others less so. And we have noticed a range of organizational cultures and where people find their comfort zones. I'm integrating the symbols and the logos for these organizations throughout this presentation. Images are powerful, and we as a community have developed many of them. A little over 30 years ago, Colorado and much of the country began flexing its religious muscles. Growing up, I had been taught that religion and politics were not something that was discussed in polite company, much like sex and the other bodily functions that are the reign of juvenile humor. That changed, and we have all had to react to it or be swept under the carpet as irrelevant. As a child, and even as a teen and young adult, I somehow came to the conclusion that humanism, or atheism, including my right not to believe mythologies, was 100% pure American. The new activism coming from the religious folks implied that somehow I was less an American because I didn't accept their versions of reality. To me, their statements were and are in themselves treasonous. I remember being lost and confused when in 3rd grade, my family moved from New York to Colorado. In my first day of school after the move, I stood to recite the pledge with the rest of my classmates. I had been saying the pledge every day since kindergarten. But this pledge was different. Someone had added the words, "under God." I didn't belong. A few decades later, Colorado, and specifically Colorado Springs, became ground zero for religious evangelical actions and organizations. We saw the invasion of Focus on the Family and over 100 more evangelical businesses. Some came because of economic incentives by friendly foundations with lots of money. Others because of a change in our tax laws. No matter why they came in droves, like one of those biblical plagues of locusts. So, facing the increasing noise and power of the religious right, we had no choice but first to speak up and then gather with others of similar thinking and create organizations and eventually communities around our life philosophies. In recent years, there have been groups sprouting up all over the United States, and that one group is from Canada, so they're up there too. Some of them are simple, like meetups, and others are varied and complex in their reach, like the Evolfish Company and the Richard Dawkins Foundation for Reason and Science, and the various Student Secular Alliance groups, and the Secular Coalition for America's state chapters. We are finding our voices and making our stands. But who are these organizations? Over the years, I've noticed that we are less knowledgeable about our own fellow travelers than we are of the various mainstream religions. Indeed, on at least one online test, non-believers know more about the mainstream religions than their adherents do. And believe me, the amount of misinformation they have about us is even greater. As we explore, let's keep in mind that this is not a scientific study. This is my impression from 20 years' experience of sitting at evolved fish sales tables at conventions. We must also be mindful that each individual's journey often begins with whichever organization they first encounter. There have been decades where there were no opportunities locally or only one choice. These days, any one individual's experience can encompass several groups, sometimes at the same time, and often as a progression and a response to what is happening in their personal lives and the world in general. Some of us step out of years of religious structure and leap off the building, free-falling into hardcore, in-your-face atheism. Others are more gentle in their approach, finding a safe haven in humanism, ethical culture, or humanistic Judaism. Let's also keep in mind that people often move back and forth between radical activist and mild-mannered supporter. I'll use myself as an example, although I understand that my journey is pretty far from the norm and much influenced by the community in which I live. So here I am, this shy, mild, introverted girl growing up in Colorado Springs. I was passable by the 1960s and 1970s standards because at that time I was a Unitarian. It was a real church, so I had somewhere to go every Sunday morning to get my good person card stamped. I was often asked which church I attended. That's how you open conversations in Colorado Springs. And when I responded Unitarian, it seemed to be okay for most people. Somewhere in my high school years, it became important to me to express my differences. So my best friend and I bought matching necklaces. I've been watching my daughter Tani begin to do this with her friends. And Tani exchanges necklaces that say best friends or the little woven friendship bracelets that many of the kids use these days. My friend and I bought little devil charms that we wore in silver chains around our necks. So I'm sort of the source for some of that misinformation people have. We were UU humanists and atheists. We wanted to be sure that no one mistook us for people who went to a real church. We weren't really devil worshippers, but we didn't know about any other symbols. No way were we campaigning for George Wallace the way some of our fellow classmates were. This was my first in-your-face atheist stage. Years later, I would see my son Josh go through the same phase. I think I stayed in this stage for a few years, finally moving on to just being plain too busy to create religious waves, and also my time in college where it wasn't needed. I finished college, got my master's degree, and then got married. My husband wasn't any flavor of religious, so it still wasn't a concern. I'd laugh at the silly signs in front of the churches, but for the most part, the religious issues were generally off my radar. I think this is the standard. This is the pattern for most secular, non-theistic people. Unless there is a threat to our way of life, we just get on with the business of living and raising our families. This is a mistake because our counterparts, can you read that? Because our counterparts in the religious communities hold our silence as agreement, our reticence as submission. They slip in with innocuous-sounding names, hidden agendas, and loud voices. They're motivated to stand up and be heard. They count on their vocal majority to drown out our quiet whispers. They force through their agendas because we did not speak up loudly enough. At the very least, join an organization. Give them a few dollars, more if you can afford it. And most importantly, allow yourself to be counted. In the mid-1980s, as my marriage disintegrated, I brought my little boy back to Colorado Springs and back to the Unitarian church in which I had grown up. He attended the Sunday school, and I worked with the high school kids. This is about the time the world started to change. One of the high school students was being forced into prayers at her public school. Another wasn't being taught evolution in his science class. One of my son's good friends was having swastikas carved into his desk at school. I was working as an administrator at the local community college, and among my other tasks, I oversaw the single-parent displaced homemaker programs for the full state of Colorado. Suddenly, I was seeing the fallout of religious indoctrination as it affected mostly women and families in the real world. Where did this racial prejudice and misogyny in the workforce come from? As I mingled with the people participating in and running these programs, I saw the tentacles that reach back to religion. When a Mormon client was told by the elders of her church that she needed to return to the abusive husband because he was her conduit to God, the picture came into focus. Gary and I began Evolvefish in 1993. It was just as a hobby to poke fun at the anti-science crowd and raise a little money for the local freethinkers group that we were just starting. As angry as I was still the cautious one. Should we really do this? Would we be making more enemies rather than enlightening and saving our community? Would we be making people defensive and unable to hear us? Is it better to bend or stand your ground? Which is really the better approach to instigate change? A few years later, I attended a team building and diversity workshop where I was singled out as the lone atheist. A week later, my boss called from his vacation. He was literally in tears. He had been instructed to call me and tell me that my contract at the college was not being renewed. They had pushed me from uninvolved non-theist to hardline activist atheist again. They pushed me off the building, and I moved from Unitarian to in-your-face atheist. So I had been all over the map. I've been mild, a UU. I've been in your face, an atheist wearing a devil charm. I've been uninvolved, living my life, and then tossed back into activist atheist with the life experiences to direct me towards caution and restraint. Colorado passed the No Civil Rights for LGBT legislation. That was also referred to as Amendment 2. And I got a little bit more militant. We advertised Evolvefish in mainstream media. We moved from the safe markets of the independent newspapers to Discover Magazine, The Nation, The Progressive, The UU World, Popular Science. Keep in mind, this was pretty bold for a couple in Colorado Springs in 1993. And then we discovered the movement and the various national organizations. A local friend was a member of FFRF. Another was a member of American Atheists. I was starting to hear about the various national organizations. And they all seemed like add-ons to my Unitarian connection. Then, just as I was finding the American Humanist Association, the Unitarians asked me to leave. I distinctly remember the line the minister used. He said, "Well, of course, Becky, you're welcome, but I can't imagine why an atheist would want to be here." How many of us had the distinction of being invited to leave our home church. By the mid-1990s, the Unitarians had moved back to deism, New Age, pagan, and soft Christian. Out and bold atheists were not what that church wanted. Feeling more than a little disenfranchised, I was very happy to have found the humanists. For me, humanism is the right fit. Like Goldilocks, for the right bowl, looking for the right bowl of porridge or the right bed, the American Humanist Association fits me. I get to be an in-your-face atheist some days and more accommodating on others. I also have the charge to look at the broader implications of a secular, non-theistic life. I consider how my life philosophy influences my child rearing, my views on scientific discoveries like stem cell research, ethics, morals, community, and even how I drive. Although AHA has become my home, I am very grateful that all of these kindred organizations are out there so that each of us can find the one that works best for us. And to know that if we need more or different, there are other organizations to try on. The fine print here is that I like what all of these organizations do. They are all on the side of liberating the human condition from the controls and suppression put on us by religions and their dogmas. Let's call this next section Secularism 0.01. Here are the groups that I am familiar with: the American Humanist Association, the Atheist Alliance of America, American Atheist, the Ethical Culture Society, the Council for Secular Humanism, Freedom from Religion Foundation, and Humanistic Judaism. There are more, just couldn't listen. There are also not out secularists. There are people who are hiding still in their closets. The Skeptics, the James Randi Educational Foundation, and the Unitarian Universalists, who once led the secular organizations and actually spawned the AHA. They have been setting their course back to deism, Christianity light. Now, each of the local groups, each of the national organizations has a distinct personality, similar to the differences between Catholics, Mormons, Jehovah's Witnesses, Methodists, Episcopalians, and yes, even evangelicals. For obvious reasons, I'll start with the American Humanist Association, or AHA. We advocate for progressive values and equality for humanists, atheists, and free thinkers. Founded in 1941, we promote the idea that you can be good without God. We are headquartered now in Washington, D.C. We litigate, lobby, advertise, publish, organize, and speak out to promote the positive philosophy of humanism and further humanist causes. Simply put, we are atheists with progressive values. AHA tends to understate their programs and their accomplishments. Think of the workmaid who stays in their cubicle with their head down working while everybody else is at the water cooler. We are working harder than ever to meet the needs of a growing secular population. AHA tends to take itself very seriously. The people in it tend to be a bit quieter, gentler, insightful, well-informed, engaged, and yet still passionate. Remember, we are dealing with atheists who want more academic research, more knowledge, more compassion, more art, more equality, more fairness. We are comfortable being humanists. And we are pragmatic. We will play nice with religious people when their goals match ours. When humanists come to the Evolve Fish table, they are thoughtful about their selections. They may laugh out loud at that edgy button, God is just pretend, but they may not wear it. Atheists will. They will wear intelligent design, and they will embrace almost all of the progressive political products. These people are passionate about making a better world. They just aren't always boisterous about it. Next, we come to an offshoot of the AHA, the Council for Secular Humanism. Its mission is to advocate and defend a non-religious life stance rooted in science, naturalistic philosophy, and human ethics, and to serve and to support adherents of that life stance. These folks are good humanists, but they don't give a hoot about democracy. It takes too long. One of their signature claims to fame is that they never, not ever, held a religious tax exemption. And this is somehow important to a number of people. I don't know very much about them on the personal level. Until this year, they never wanted an Evolve Fish table. So I really don't know what they like. I do know that on occasions, some of them will buy the anti-homeopathy bumper sticker that we made at Evolve Fish a few years ago. The Society for Humanistic Judaism, founded in 1963 by Rabbi Sherwin Wine, the SHJ embraces a human-centered philosophy that combines the celebration of Jewish culture and identity with an adherence to humanistic values and ideas. The Society for Humanistic Judaism offers a non-theistic alternative within Judaism. The Society organizes and supports inclusive congregations and communities, creates celebrations for Shabbat and other Jewish holidays and life cycles. They publish resources, educational materials, and offer adult and children programming. The Atheist Alliance of America, we all should be, we're going to get flooded. The waters are rising, is a nonprofit umbrella organization in support of democratic local affiliates to project a positive voice for atheism through community activism. The organization began in 1991, and you are here at their annual conference. Atheists are somewhat different from humanists. They tend to lean towards more noise. They are passionate, especially about being atheists. Atheist organizations tend to be focused on the God question, more so than focused on community building and those other things. How you live your life without a supernatural friend. This group has made serious and concerted runs several times at adding positive values to their atheism. There has been atheism plus and positive atheism. The problem here is that you end up in deep water pretty quickly. Just because you have given up imaginary friends doesn't necessarily mean that you all share the same cultural values. The Alliance, the Atheist Alliance folks, have also made a serious commitment to equality and the democratic process. American Atheists fights on the front lines of the battle for separation of religion and government, laboring for the civil liberties of atheists since 1963. American Atheists has challenged the intrusion of religion and religious traditions in schools, work, and public policy, while educating millions about what it means to be an atheist. I'm not sure they always do that quite with the same flavor that some of us like. These folks are the non-theists. Give them an outrageous, blatant, feeling-stomping project, and they embrace it and make it harder hitting. These folks pull no punches. They are more likely to be missionaries for the cause. Conference attendees have been known to get down on us at the Evolve Fish table when one of our progressive political slogans is found offensive. Atheists are more likely to appreciate libertarian slogans. The Freedom from Religion Foundation may be the only family dynasty in the non-theistic movement. They do pretty good legal activist work, bring in lots of money, make good use of the media, and are members of the Atheist Alliance America. FFRF has a few local chapters, and they appear to, but they prefer to be hunkered down in Wisconsin, throwing legal bombs around the country. They have pretty fair aim. Evolvefish hasn't been invited to be one of their conventions in years, so I have no intelligence there. The American Ethical Union, or AEU, is a national federation of ethical, cultural, and ethical humanist societies. They were founded in 1876. Ethical societies are congregational religious humanist fellowships. They meet regularly to explore ethical issues and ideals and to foster ethical relationships between individuals and groups. Ethical societies are actively engaged in social justice activities such as civil and human rights and protecting the secular nature of government. I really have very little first-hand experience here. These are a rare species. I suspect they are like humanists on steroids. I do not know I do know that they play very well with others and that they are congregationally focused. The HUU humanists are the humanist subgroup of Unitarian Universalist Association, and they strive to promote and extend the use of rational inquiry without supernatural considerations, followed by compassionate action in all human interactions. For over 50 years, the UU Humanists and its precursor organizations have celebrated the Humanist Manifesto's vision of a religion without gods, both within Unitarian Universalism and the wider world. These folks are fighting a rear guard battle. There was a time when they were enthusiastically embraced by the leadership of the UUA. Now they are sometimes tolerated and often scorned. They stay within the UUA because that used to be their home, and they like the people. They gave money to the building fund, and they like the sense of community. The problem is that their parents moved and didn't give them the new address. They followed them, and now they get to live in the garage. There are many other organizations that are somewhat specialized, which I had intended to cover, but find that time is limited. So I'll name just a few of them. There's the Student Secular Alliance, the Brights, the Military Association of Atheists and Freethinkers, Camp Quest, and many more blossoming every month. In our current system of government and culture, numbers represent power and influence. The higher the number, the greater the influence. This is the single most important reason to join at least one national group. You want to be counted, and we need you to be counted. Even if you are not a joiner, one of those independent cats that refuses to be herded. Perhaps you have no interest in community. Your life is full and fulfilled. If you can afford to be here, you can afford to join one of these organizations. And if you really can't afford the money, AHA has a free online membership. Please, just take the time to be counted. Over 20 years ago, when Gary and I saw this wave of evangelicals barreling towards our community, we decided to look for ways to support the people we agree with, to tweak those that we found offensive. We both like to read, but we aren't writers. We like science, but we aren't scientists. We like people most of the time. We aren't the life of the party types. We are both activists. So we looked for rallying points we could identify, ideas that would create discussions, and people that cared about the quality of life issues that we care most deeply about. We weren't very knowledgeable about the movement, its players, or the organizations. We needed something to represent those on the other side of the evangelicals. We looked for images and settled on symbols. We had seen the Darwin fish, and we decided it would do for the time being. The Darwin fish seemed to speak to those of us who wanted to stand up for reason, rationality, and science. We soon found it wanting. And the evolved fish was born. It's the next step on the evolutionary chain from hero worship, which was the Darwin fish, to philosophy. We carefully designed it so that the tool that it was using could not be interpreted as a weapon. We wanted it to just stand for science. What do symbols do for us as a culture and a movement? It has been said that as humans, we make meaning by seeing. We use images to clarify what we are trying to communicate. Discussion and considered thought bring a clarity which allows an image to emerge that can say it all in one glance. As the old adage goes, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And to spread the meme of the image, you need persistence and repetition. Over the past 20 years, Evolve Fish has put out hundreds of thousands of these images for the public to begin grasping and internalizing their meanings. Each time an ad was placed in a mainstream magazine, tens of thousands of images were put in front of the general public. The effect wasn't always enthusiastic endorsement. Early on, the Richmond agency threatened to sue us over a design that they claimed was Einstein. I thought it looked just like Karen. And then PBS sued us over this bumper sticker, a PBS mind in a Fox News world. We have also had our share of death threats, some more concerning than others, but we continued on our journey. Many of the images have been around as logos for decades. Some have reached the level of branding, whereby seeing the image, the viewer instantly knows what is being communicated. The Christian cross informs the viewer that this is a Christian. Very few people who wear it take the time to think more deeply about its implications. It is, after all, an instrument of torture used by the polytheistic Roman Empire. The crescent moon and star that we and most modern Muslims see as their image only became the sign of Islam's in the 1960s. Before that, they didn't have a symbol, an easily recognizable rallying point. Now they do. The interesting thing that happened was the versioning of secular symbols. American Atheist had the atomic symbol cleverly left with the bottom left open. It was explained to me by the designer, that's the designer of the symbol, that it was done by request of Madeleine Marie O'Hare. The story is that she said, we don't know everything about science and the atom yet, so we're going to leave the bottom open for more information. The American Humanist Association adopted the British Happy Humanist. The Council for Secular Humanism morphed the Happy Humanist to meet their vision. The Brights spent months coming up with their design. Richard Dawkins came out with the Red A as part of their Out campaign. It is an interesting application of the scarlet letter. It's a celebratory use for a shameful symbol effectively making the point and repurposing it. The Atheist Alliance had a competition to come up with their Circle A design. Along with these designs, we suddenly found that a new medium was developed, a way of expressing any idea that was in opposition to that old Christian fish. There has been an enthusiastic evolution of designs, with everything from a science fish to Elvis, Madonna, gefilte, lutefisk, fish and chips, sushi, and Buddha. A new religion was developed, the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster. Along with his noodly appearance came his invisible unicorn and pirates. They give candy to children. There has not yet emerged that overarching image that says, no religions, Stone Age or other. Where is our cross, our crescent moon and star? The closest candidates appear to be the evolved fish and the Darwin fish. But are they enough? Are they the best image to use? Every survey and poll in recent years has shown that our numbers are increasing. And yet, we have not achieved the level of influence in keeping with those numbers. Do you realize that 14% of Americans that claim to be nuns represent more people than that of Muslims, Jews, Mormons, and Pentecostals combined? More than the estimated gay and lesbian population. More even than the African American population. We are, in fact, one of the largest minorities in the United States. But you would never know it from our organized numbers or political power. This is largely due to our diversity and not being seen as a unified bloc. It appears to the outside world that we can be ignored and marginalized because we can be easily distracted from our core value by the perceived differences. Feminism is only one among the areas where we could be in agreement, but in our most extreme dialogues, we push for differentiation instead of common ground. I encourage you to think of at least one thing you can do to support the movement for equal representation and equal rights for non-theists. It may be as simple as letting your neighbor or classmate know. Come out of the free thinker closet. Join one of the organizations and let us add you to the official numbers. Attend a local or national conference. You're all here, so congratulations, you started off right. And or send money. Make one or more donations to the secular group of your choice. Where we go from here is up to each of us. The alternative isn't pretty. Thank you for your time this evening.